This is a Q Media production.
Failure doesn't have to be failure. It can actually be the best thing that ever happened to you.
We have Pastor Phil.
Pastor Phil Pringle.
Pastor Phil.
Whoa!
Sydney, Australia.
So I wanted to bring a renaissance, but I also felt called to revive some areas of the church that I felt had died. I want to help you find God. I am believing for you to have a massive revival.
Every city across the globe.
And when we started in the DY Surf Life Saving Club, we had 13 people, and it blew up.
Global senior pastors of almost 600 churches.
Culturally, we were on another planet.
Did you struggle with letting go of certain things? What's the difference between running a business and running a church?
I don't think every one of us have got our whole destiny, purpose on the inside of us. I think we might have 10%, but I think other people have other pieces of our jigsaw in them. If you do not forget who you are, you will be blessed in what you do. This is like kind of an unholy thing, isn't it? He said God didn't seem to be bothered.
In this episode, I'm interviewing Phil Pringle. He is the founder of C3 Global. They have 600 churches around the world, and they plant 40 to 50 every year. This is an incredible feat. And I'm interviewing him in a way which I haven't seen him interviewed in this way before. And we get a lot of gold nuggets out of him. If you're trying to scale your business or trying to make an impact in your community, or you're a pastor yourself, you're going to love this episode. Pastor Phil, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
It's good to have you. Mate, I got to say, if I Googled you, right, if you Googled Phil Pringle,
right,
or Pastor Phil, there's a lot of things that come up. OAM, Dr. Phil, president of Oxford Falls Grammar School, songwriter, artist. What the heck?
Yeah, confused, eh? Yeah, very widespread, and just took a shot at everything I felt I had a talent or a gifting towards. Stayed away from the things that I definitely knew I could not do. And so, maybe that was spreading myself too thin sometimes. It certainly took a lot of energy to apply myself in all those areas. But I also felt called to revive some areas of the church that I felt had died, especially like the arts. So we had an arts college as well. Mm-hmm. I feel like we need, as the church, to really re-engage in the whole artistic field, from songs, songwriting, musicianship. And I'm not just talking about praise and worship in church, which I'm right into, but I mean in the marketplace. Mm-hmm. And so to be involved in all those areas, dance, architecture, painting, sculpture. To me, that whole world has become so dark, and yet it can be so brilliant, as past great Christian art shows us. So I wanted to bring a renaissance of that sort of area. So we invested heavily into the School of Arts. Education, we started a school like you just mentioned, because I think the church really needs to re-engage in education at a high level as well.
Mm. Yeah, that's my read on you as being so talented. Like, you probably don't get a lot of airtime, because when you're known as a public figure, mm-hmm. you're known for a lot of on-stage time, so speaking mm-hmm. and being a leader of a global movement. Mate, I got to say, like, it's actually very rare what you've done. Mm-hmm. It's a reminder for people to hear this. Like, through a corporate lens, it's an empire. Mm-hmm. Through a corporate lens, most people build something but fail to actually pass it on. Mm-hmm. And they fail to actually grow up past their personality or
right.
past their skills. So that's why I got you on the show, particularly because, one, I followed you for a long time. I've been impacted by you in my life. And two, what you have done and used your life to build is very impressive, regardless if it's in business or if it's with the church. So I wanted to, for the viewers out there who might not know you, they might see, 600 churches, you're jet setting around. Were you loaded when you first started? Did you just in Australia, we're threatened by success. We see someone with success and we're like, oh, they must have just got lucky. we love to dish it out on them. So correct.
Yeah, no, I'm still not loaded. Still got a mortgage. It's like, no, definitely. We started with When we came to Australia, we had a church in New Zealand for 3 years that didn't get above 30 people. So I proved to myself and a lot of others that I really couldn't grow a church. So I needed God. And he has put me in that position many times so that I have got no other option than God. So that puts me in a place of prayer. And I think he enjoys taking us all to a point of reliance on him. So failure doesn't have to be failure. It can actually be the best thing that ever happened to you. So when we actually sold our house in New Zealand, I built a house.
How old were you?
I was, when we left I started my first church when I was 23. And so I was 27 when we left Australia. New Zealand to come to Australia. And I did the impossible. I sold a house at a loss. And so it was such a depressed market. So we came with $1,600 in debt and on the house that we lost money on. And we had a few dollars in our pocket. It wasn't like church planning today where people are sent out with huge amounts of money and lots of startup ideas and friends and support. We just had one set of friends who came with us and a pianist. And that was all we had when we landed in Sydney.
You were kidless at the time?
No, we had two kids. Two
Right.
kids, yeah. We had my daughter and son, Rebecca and Daniel. And we landed there. And we ended up actually sleeping on a friend's living room floor. So no, we didn't start with anything. We started from a minus position. But we knew we had the word of God in us that he'd said, start a church in Sydney. So we were staking our lives on that. And when we started in the DY Surf Life Saving Club, we had 13 people in Easter of 1980. And it blew up. By the end of the year, we were at about 200, 250 people.
Yeah, well.
Kept growing. Then I had the idea of starting other churches. I feel like it was God. He said start 10 churches in 10 major cities around the world. I thought that would take a lifetime. I thought it would take me my whole life to do that. But it actually was done in 4 years. So it started a ball rolling that one thing after another, it created a whole movement.
I want to double tap so much on this. So before even you moved from New Zealand and sold your house, when did you become a Christian? And what was Phil Pringle up to? Was he getting into mischief? Like, what was he known for? What were you up to? How did you find your faith?
Okay, so I met the Lord when I was 19. So it was like 4 years later that we started a church. I was in the hippie era, anti-Vietnam, protesting, make love not war, all that. And so I was a kind of a test pilot for Roche for a little while, and we were flying high, and but it was interesting to be in that scene. And then the Jesus Revolution was happening in America, but we really didn't have anything to do with it. I saw the picture of Jesus on the front cover of Time talking about the Jesus Revolution, but I had an experience where we were messing around with like occult stuff, and I felt this evil presence in the house. I didn't know how to deal with it. So I reached out to a friend who said, go to this spiritualist place. And when she put down the phone, her mother asked her, what was that about? And she said, explain the situation. She said, don't send him there, send him here. Because she had met the Lord herself in a small Pentecostal church in Christchurch, New Zealand. And so I went down there, and it was full of old people. Like they were all really old. The youth leader was 120. It was like ridiculous. The elders were so old. They're like, came from Noah's era, I think. They had these three-piece suits on. And so culturally, we were on another planet. Chris and I both had really long hair and long dark coats, and we're barefoot. We walk into this place. But it felt good. It felt really good. So when the preacher started preaching and asked people to receive Jesus, I did. I said, yeah, I'll have this. I couldn't say it was a thought through decision. It was just more I could feel God, and I wanted it. And so Chris did too, my wife. She was my girlfriend then. And we started following Jesus. Wanted to reach out to all the homeless and the lost people in town. So we got a big house, started dragging people home who were sleeping under bridges, just come out of jail, social misfits, just having problems in life. And so we had this house full of people getting saved, born again, transformed. So then we learned making disciples was really the thing that we were called to do. So we kept making disciples, people who would live by disciplines, people who live by a new way of living. And we found that has been pretty much the foundation of everything we've done since it. So you have revival and turn it into discipleship. And I think that I've written a book on that recently called Disciple, which is done really well because it needs to be the foundation that we actually base our lives on.
Yeah, I think, so I worked for many years helping youth. So for 8 years, my partner and I, we had a business. We helped 600 families a week. So NDIS providers, people with on the spectrum, people on the edge of life, and we helped them choose life. Music, academic, life coaching, had 3 campuses, and we sold that. And one of the things I noticed about that industry or helping the needy is that you can't substitute the one-on-one presence or the involvement, the shoulder-to-shoulder, the face-to-face. You can throw money at a problem and that doesn't solve them. But it's actually really hard to find the workers to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that sounds like a principle that is in discipleship.
Yeah, it's hard work. I mean, anybody who thinks that you're going to have success without work you're in a pipe dream. That work is essential. And for some reason in the Christian world, the word works has got negative connotations.
I agree.
Because it is like we don't get saved by works, but by grace. Well, that's true, but man, once you're saved, that you better be working from then on. Because he is saying, I want you full of good works. And when God is looking for people, he says he's looking for workers. He's not looking for talented people or gifted people or experienced people, young people, old people, rich people. Just will somebody work? Will somebody go to work? Because I'll empower you. I'll give you the wisdom, the skill, and everything else. And so when at the start of a year, like currently, there's all people with dreams, but your effort matter match your dream. Otherwise, it's going to leave you extremely frustrated.
Yeah, there's a big, there's this massive thing I'm really not liking that I've seen the last few years online. Is this rise of manifestation. So manifestation has different definitions to people, but the one that concerns me the most is the one where you act like you're Harry Potter and you're like, okay, I can see what I want. So I'll write it down and I'll speak it out like it's a spell and it will just come to me.
Right.
And I see stupid things on the internet where it's like, chant this, money will come to me. Money will come to me. Or this jingle comes on, you repeat it out loud and you will receive that in your bank account.
Yeah.
With no effort required.
Right.
And I see hundreds of shares, hundreds of comments on these sorts of things saying, yes, I've done this, I received.
Right.
And they're probably broke.
Yeah. The thing is, it's part of the process. It's not a substitute for work. But being a positive person, imaging the future, speaking it, definitely, they're powerful principles. But it's not the whole picture.
No.
If you do that and you're a lazy person, laziness is the fastest path to poverty. And work will actually pay off. In fact, there's a proverb that says, in all labor, there is profit, which is an incredible principle. Because what we were talking about before, just in terms of people getting educated in the arts and these other areas of life, actually getting educated in one area helps you in another. So if I'm laboring here, that discipline or that work is actually going to create momentum in my life. And when you got momentum, everything gets easier. We were wheeling this trolley down to the beach the other day. Went and bought one of those beach trolleys, put all your stuff in. And coming up in the sand, it's hard work, pulling this thing. But once you get a little bit of hard ground, you get some momentum in it, it halves the effort. For an aircraft taking off, I mean, most of its fuel is used in just getting momentum.
50% of fuel is used to get the lift off.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that. And there's a Japanese proverb that says, from one thing, use 10,000 times.
Yeah.
And it's this transferable skill that happens once you start getting confident and you get momentum in one area. It gives you confidence, because confidence comes from evidence. Confidence can come from proof, And I think what I want to actually ask you, Phil, is going back to your story quickly. You went from moving from New Zealand to Sydney.
Yeah.
Having 15, how many people work up to the first service?
13.
13, and you count everyone twice, right?
Yeah.
And then to go from that to 10, like have that vision in yourself to go, I think I've got to do 10.
Yeah.
What work did you have to do to be able to get to 10? I mean, in yourself, like skill gaps in your mind, because it seems like business principles are important in building a church. And my question I've been dying to ask you is, what's the difference between running a business and running a church?
Yeah, not a lot. And any pastor who's going to run a successful church needs to understand business disciplines and needs to not just be thinking, oh, God's going to talk to me and tell me what to do here and there. I mean, you will have wisdom to think for yourself. He gives you a sound mind so that you can do your own thinking. And to understand the principles of corporate decision-making, goal setting, strategizing, calendarizing, budgeting. Your finances become a very big issue. The bigger your church becomes, managing staff would probably be the biggest issue for any pastor who wants to grow a church. You're going to have somebody who looks after the music, somebody who looks after the money, somebody who looks after everything else. So you have to have all of those disciplines, team, budgeting, all the areas, compliance with government regs, everything that a business does, you need to do. And you need to do it well and apply yourself to it. And if you're diligent in that area, you've got an infrastructure that you can actually build on. But if you're not paying the rent, you're not going to be doing much at all.
Yeah, and I feel like some people might feel rubbed the wrong way for some reason in Australia particularly. This is my view on it, on business and church. Mm-hmm. But the principles, I agree. Like, if you think about being made in the image of God, being godlike in that sense, giving order to things. Business gives that whole thing of creating a business or creating a church or having this thing, it becomes an entity. It has its own tax file number, its bank account, its own reputation. It gets to a point where it's a human being.
Totally.
It's got its own life.
Yeah.
And you can steal from it. You can get sued. You can get sued. And what business does that people may struggle to understand straight or to connect to church structures with principle stuff is the accountability that comes with having business.
Yes.
It makes you hugely accountable when you run it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I take your point that some people think that if the church is run like a business, then they kind of, it tends to downgrade it if they think it's not meant to be like that. But as I said, your basic infrastructure has to be business-like. And I understand, I'm not a businessman. I'm a man of God called to actually lead a vision in obedience to the call of God. But to do that, I've got to have this infrastructure around me. And part of that infrastructure is having people who know the business of these areas. I may not know it, but I've got to employ people or have people on the team who are better at it than I am.
When did you pick that up? Because when did that become clear to you? When you were 23, 24 in that area, where you realized in order to achieve this, I need to get out of the road? Or what things did you struggle with letting go of certain things?
Yeah, I did. In the very first church, I opened the church doors. I knew how to play the guitar. I led the worship. I'd take the offering. I'd do the preaching. I'd give the announcements and I'd shake the hands of everybody as they left. Chris would do a bit around the edges as well. And one day the Lord said to me, he said, you need to let Melva play the guitar. And it was so strong on me. And I knew Melva. And I knew she couldn't really play the guitar that well.
Melva?
Yeah, Melva couldn't play. And I'm going like, yeah, Lord, well, I don't know. Well, I'll give it a shot. And I said to her, do you know how to play this song? She said, yeah. And so she's playing, and everybody starts singing and worshiping. And it kind of offended me, I thought, I'm the guy who's meant to be doing this. And then I said, I don't think you know this next song. So I took it, and I started playing, and the anointing, like the grace for doing it had gone. And everybody's just standing there looking at me. And you feel self-conscious. This season is over. Let it go. And so I let it. That would be my very first lesson. The next one that I could remember was we were baptizing people in the public pool at DY. And it was a thing we did. And so we got all these people down there and they're singing and we're baptizing people. And I'm tired because we had a lot of people to baptize, and I'd preached already, I think, maybe twice that Sunday morning. And I'm thinking, I've got another service coming up. My mind really wasn't on the job. And so I'm going in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And the Lord spoke to me, and he said, get that guy and that guy to do the baptizing. And it was Mark Kelsey and Peter Atchison. And I said, Lord, they've only been in church for like 2 months, saved, like just recent. He said, well, what's wrong with that? And I said, well, Mark Kelsey's wearing Speedos. I thought this is like kind of an unholy, thing, isn't it? And he said, God didn't seem to be bothered. So I said, you guys come over here. Now, they nearly drowned those people, Mark. I mean, here I was going in the name of the Father, Son. They're going, they're doing...
They came back and they literally seen a light.
Yeah, they're enthusiastic. And so I found that if I am able to give away, and in fact, I would say the only reason I got something is to give it away. The only reason I have a pulpit, the only reason I have a church, leadership, or anything is so I have something to give. And that's how we've basically traveled. And we'd call it delegation. Yep. I have a whole book on it called You the Leader. And a lot of people have used that. I would call it discipling, but in a business sense, definitely delegation, not dumping, but actually developing the life of another person to do the job that you're doing, but to do it better.
I heard a friend of mine hung with Richard Branson, and Richard told him this story about how Virgin was at $50 to $80 million valuation. It was in its kind of growth stage, and he was sitting in a board meeting, and his financial person was saying, here's the net profit, here's the gross profit. And he's like, what's that? And they're like, don't you know what that is? He's like, I don't know what it is. And because he can't read, and that's well known about that. And then they took him out and they drew on a whiteboard, this is what the net profit is, and pools and buckets. He's like, I got it now. And he said, listen, when you get to a point when you're growing something, you don't ask, how do I do it? You ask, who?
Right.
And it's a principle that goes across for anything that needs to grow beyond the founder. It has to be about the who. Yeah. Eventually becomes less about the how.
Totally. The how can be learned, but the who can't be replicated. And the who that's a huge subject.
Yeah, it is.
Because somebody asked Dave Wilkerson, because he had such a high success rate with getting drug addicts off drugs. Mm-hmm. And they said, how come you have got a 95% success rate and all the other rehab places have such very low percentages? He said, selection. Selection is where you win. Because if the person's got if a parent is just bringing a kid down here and they want him to get off drugs, but he doesn't want to, we won't take him on board because he doesn't want to.
Yeah.
So when you get a young leader who is teachable, but faith-filled, takes initiative, can take initiative without becoming rebellious and difficult to work with, and you've got a good character person they've got integrity, transparency, and you know you can rely on him, then you've got somebody that you can actually work with to take over or take a position. And I think that we really are involved in the miracle of transformation. I mean, I see pastors praying for a youth leader or wanting to hire a youth leader from another church. But the fact is that that youth leader is sitting right in front of them, but it looks like a lump of clay.
I agree.
And they've been praying for a pot, and God says, here's a lump of clay.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the best people are made, not found.
Yeah, totally.
And so that's amazing. So it sounds like God really helped you to be able to let go of things that you were good at, that you like doing, that you could do, but you maybe shouldn't do. But because if you stayed there, if you just been doing everything, it wouldn't have got to this point.
No.
So it sounds like you become more of an enabler, and you trust quickly. And would you say you trust quickly? But I'm sure there's challenges when you do that too along the way. So do you correct quickly? How do we?
This is a huge subject. Yeah, it's a great question.
Because just to double tap it more, because C3 is such a big global movement, it attracts big personalities and big talented people who will be like, I'm attracted to, I get the vision, but they could say, well, I might run with this myself one day. I might try what, you know what I mean? And they've got maybe the head and the hands, but maybe the heart's harder to see.
Yeah, there are definitely those people, and they've come and moved on and done great things.
Yeah.
I'm not going to begrudge that. I think Jack Welch, I think it's about a third of the guys on the Fortune 500 come from somewhere in GE years back, because of the legacy there, the influence of being involved in people's, and they sometimes do their own thing. But then you get the people who resonate with you, and they are feeling like this is lifetime. This is what my life is for. And I don't think every one of us have got our whole destiny, purpose on the inside of us. I think we might have 10%, but I think other people have other pieces of our jigsaw in them.
That's really cool.
So I got to be connected with, and there's a divinity that shapes our ends. Shakespeare said, rough hew them how we will, but this divinity that is shaping us and molding us with other people, because when you're with those people, you look a lot better than you actually are. They make you look better.
Yeah.
Your team and everybody looks better because you're all contributing to the energy and the wisdom and the smarts that actually make it all work. And so you're all ending up doing better, looking better than you would have otherwise. So selecting who's in that team becomes important. And when we were talking about before, it's, selection, the to not do list is more important to me than the to-do list. Like, this is who we're not going to be able to walk with. And I know the word discernment is probably a better word than, other words in that zone. But to discern and to have the courage of a leader to not play politics, to not play the fair game. Like, it'd only be fair to let this person. If you got a basketballer who can't shoot hoops, but he can, do passing and whatever, he's good at that. But you're in the last 30 seconds, and you need one goal, and he's been sitting on the bench for the whole game. Oh, it's only fair if we put him on, and give him a shot. He hasn't had a shot all game. You don't want that.
Yeah, it's true.
You want to win the game. And so being part of a team is understanding who's got the skills for what and having the courage and the strength to be able to slot them in where they're needed.
Yeah, I love that. I love that answer. And so if I was like, because I can already discern that there'll be some people going, well, I'm at this point where I'm at 200, or my church is at a certain point, or my business is at a certain point, and I might be doing all these things that are stopping me. Would you say in military there's some units where there's 4 people in a platoon or something like that?
Right.
There's the commander.
Right.
There's, there's in business it'd be like finance, marketing, sales, and KPI, like a key person of influence, the face. Is there an amount of how important is the core team? How big should a core team be when it's starting from that size?
It's interesting. It's an interesting question because I would say my core team has grown smaller as we've grown bigger.
Yeah, right.
When it was when we first started our church, my core team was pretty much the whole church. And I would teach them. I'd say on Wednesday night we're having a Bible study, and I sort of invested the culture of what our congregation was going to be in that Wednesday night Bible study. So they were all on board. Yeah, we're in the core, but it's obviously impossible to leave it at that stage because as a church grows, you get various people at different radius towards the core. There are the newcomers. There are the people who are not that interested in getting too committed. There are the semi-committed, they're the very committed, and then there's the guys who'll give their life for what you're doing. Yeah. And so to build on those becomes really important that whatever you profile and honor, you'll get more of. And so if you profile, you put that person up on the stage and you let them do their thing, people are going to emulate that. You'll get more of that. So again, leaders need the strength and courage not to be emotionally blackmailed into somebody who's saying, I want to be on the stage. Use me or lose me. All that. And the pastor who's desperate to have people say, oh, all right, you can have a go. Well, that you can't do that because you're going to get more of that person. And you don't want more of that person because if you've got a church full of people who just all want their moment in the spotlight, what you'd prefer to have is the quintessential Australian, the quiet achiever. Like just people who are content to work in the background and build a strong, great church. And so I would profile that personality and those people become the core team, not your stars. I mean, stars are good here and there, but you want solid workers and reliable characters and people of integrity, people of strength, right in that core team.
I did this experiment online where I visited a strip of cafes and pubs across the road from our studio, and they looked identical in a way. Like if you look at the menu, and you go to Manly and they're all next to each other, competitions next to each other. Yeah. The price is the same, still have an espresso, they offer avocado smash. Same with the pub, they all have schnitties and you have their TAB and they have their UFC. And the question I asked them was, why should I choose you over them? So I said, I'm going to give $100 to whoever can tell me why should I eat here or over next door.
Right.
And the answers were amazing. They were like, well, we're cheaper. I'm like, okay, so it's about price for you?
Right.
Oh, we deliver our copies under 5 minutes. Yeah. Okay, it's a promise, that's cool. And the other one didn't know what to say. It was like, okay, that's interesting. And I wanted to ask you this question. Churches can look very similar from maybe buildings and sizes.
Right.
But structures, like on a service, songs, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Why should someone choose that church or your church or their church when from the outside Australians might be saying, oh, they're all the same?
Yeah. Yeah, that's another great question, Matt. Okay, so occasionally in our church, I would come off the stage with a microphone in my hand and I'd wander around the church and I'd say, how long have you been coming? And they'd say 20 years. And many of these people I'd never met, even after 20 years. I mean, because you're putting the pastoring of the church out to your team. And, you might recognize them from a distance, but we had sort of taught our church that this is okay. For us to grow, we need length in our relational chords so that we're not needy congregation, needing attention all the time. And so I think that builds good standalone, self-sufficient Christians, and they're happy, they're okay, because the attention that they're getting is better than what I could give them from their local pastor, from their connect group, etc. So
what I always loved about C3 particularly, I mean, I've grown up in church. I've been to a lot of events. I've been able to see Baptists and a whole different, all the brotherhoods, all the different type of, and in business is the same. You have General Pants Co, you have Glue, and you have all these different clothing brands that look similar, but they're all different cultures. C3 culture is very distinguishable, in my view. And when you go around asking people, how long have you been here? And what do you love about this church? That's what business people don't ask their customers enough of.
Right.
They actually don't go to them. In COVID, I told all our clients that were stressing, I'm like, go talk to your customers.
Yeah.
Talk to them. And a lot of people aren't talking at all.
No.
And what do they love about you? And the raving fans that have been there for years, you want 5 or 10 more of them. So what made them want to come?
Yeah.
And I think the C3 culture I've been impacted by is a lot of great celebration of success.
Right.
Of good, successful, of guys. And there's an entrepreneurial spirit in the place.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's been one of the big things that we have celebrated all the time. So because churches have frowned on success, somebody drives into the car park in a nice new car. Yeah. How do you get that? Right? And I said, no, go over and shake his hand, say congratulations, and help people feel comfortable about doing okay. So they don't drive their old thing down to church and leave the new one in the garage. I mean, people should feel okay. God is with you. He wants to bless your life. He wants you to be healthy, and he wants your family to be happy. He wants you to live in nice circumstances. And so that has definitely been helpful for many people who felt a little guilted in other churches to feel comfortable in ours. But when I would hold that microphone out to these people, I'd say, you've been coming for 20 years. Yeah. Why? Why do you keep coming back?
Yeah.
What is it? Do you love it? Oh, I really love this place. What do you love about it? They go like, I got to tell you, this was really quite offensive for me because I think I'm a reasonable preacher.
Yeah.
They never said preacher. They never said preacher. And I would bemoan the fact. I go, what about my preaching? They just take it for granted, But they would say, "Oh, love the community."
Yeah.
And that really blessed me. That really helped me because we were sometimes called a friendly church. I wasn't that impressed with that. Oh, people go, "Oh yeah, we're the friendliest church." Whatever. I said, "No, we're not here to be friendly. Disneyland can be friendly. We're here to make friends. Take them for dinner. Have them in your world. Go to their weddings. Be at their funeral. Whatever. It's like being there in the valley is what friendship is." And so they would say that was the strongest bond. Was I've found emotional bonds here. I've found that I'm not lonely anymore. And I thought, that is such a satisfying thing for a pastor. And then they'd say the worship, because there was always this feeling of the presence of God. There's always that sense. I mean, I was in our church on Sunday morning. The worship in this place is phenomenal. And they'd say the vision, because we're reaching out all over the world and we're helping people and building villages and doing things like this. So, and then one or two, I have to say, the preaching's okay.
Yeah. Can someone please tell me if, because it's even in common courtesy, it's like, I'm the person asking, I'm right in front of you, mate. So what do you like about this restaurant?
Yes.
Oh, the people. It's like, how about the food? How about the cook, the chef? That's hilarious. Now, one of the things I love, and I don't know if this gets enough airtime about Phil Pringle in my view, but I'm impressed by over the years, how you've remained relevant.
Right.
As a leader, as an individual, public facing.
Right.
All great leaders have to reinvent themselves.
Yeah.
In some way. So they go up a decade, they've got a decade more experience than they had before.
Yeah.
Every James Bond movie from 1960 to Daniel Craig, they had at least average 4 movies every decade with the same actor. Then they reinvented with a new technology and a new actor.
Interesting. Yeah.
And they keep going. you've done that really well. I don't know if you subconsciously have done it, but the way you look, the topics you talk about, from my perspective, it's not just tried, you have an intention to remain relevant in topic and also as you've grown older.
You know, Matt, that it is an interesting fact. I think being authentic is really important. And when you see somebody like an old guy trying to be a young guy, and it's not genuine to them, it kind of doesn't ring right. And you wish. So I'm always just trying to be what I feel most comfortable being. Me, I'm not actually trying to be anything, but I do want to be relevant. That sometimes means being contemporary, but always be relevant. So whenever I'm in a place like India, I mean, I want to understand, what is your greatest anxieties here? What are the deepest concerns? And so I want to address those. There's no use prophesying over a guy with a broken leg. He wants his leg to be healed, or fixed up. You need to be talking, scratching where people are itching. And so I would try and understand, when I'm in Australia, what are the deepest needs right now, and not just deepest, but the needs. Like cost of living is a crisis for a lot of people in Australia right now. No matter which way you cut it, they are feeling under the hammer. And then another thing is that a lot of people want to travel. They love traveling out of Australia. When you see the numbers of people who are traveling around Christmas. So these are dreams, needs, talking about these things, and making yourself relevant to current affairs in the world. And I try not to get opinion heavy. I'd rather get gospel heavy, I guess. So when there's, a war going on or a conflict, I'd rather picture it as a sign of the last times. But I'll stand for what's right without any hesitation. But I just, in the process, I want to win people to Christ at the same time.
And Jesus did that. He spoke relevant. He didn't, being born in the time that Jesus was, hypothetically, he could tapped into the future and talked in a different type of language altogether to people. One day there'll be this and there'll be this. But he spoke to the people, fishermen, as fishermen did.
Sure.
So he was where the people were, and he spoke to the needs of the time.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, and it was agricultural timing.
Yeah. So I think the leaning in a lot of Christian thinking is to hammer on the negatives in society, and so we've gotten into this place where it looks like we're the crowd who judge everybody else. We've got this long, bony, condemning finger pointing, oh, you naughty, naughty people. Yeah. You're doing this wrong and you're doing that wrong. And we think that occupying the moral high ground is going to help us, but it hurts us so bad. Yeah, right. We need to occupy the high mercy ground and be seen as people who have compassion, empathy, we care, and we're not going to judge you. We have standards, and grace means nothing if you haven't got a standard, if you haven't got a judgment. But to see people's lives transformed. And a lot of the things that the church is judging about people in the world are the symptoms. They're not the root cause. So people they're behaving badly, maybe they're doing all kinds of crime, but maybe that's not the root. Maybe they're just symptoms of something that's deeper in there. And if I can get the axe to that root and they find peace and get hope instead of despair, and their lives are transformed, they learn a whole new way of living, then I've achieved what Jesus wants me to.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I do think the airtime that a lot of churches get is always, it's the media's agenda to get that, to focus only on the questionable aspects or certain aspects. But that's where I'm really encouraged by the amount of things you're posting at the moment. And I personally just want to keep encouraging you to do it because it's good past. We live in a great time where you can broadcast.
Yeah.
And we got to turn the volume louder on those things that aren't being seen somewhere else. On social media platforms, that is the new Sky News. That is. And we got to use our own channels as leaders to be able to steward that well. Because people are subscribing to your channel.
Yeah.
And so we have that chance to be able to be super intentional about showing them a way.
Sure.
A new way.
Well, there's so much darkness, Matt, in the whole internet.
Yeah.
Arguing, yelling, screaming, ranting, raving, condemning, accusing. It's just full on all the time.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful that I'm like a shaft of light in the middle of it every now and then, that people go, whoa, that's different. It won't be relevant to what they want it to be talking about maybe, but maybe it's relevant to another area deep inside their soul that, because after a while you feel like if you're not ranting and raving about the list, of Epstein's list or about the politics in America or about the war in Israel, if you're not doing something about all that, then like, what are you even talking for? But actually, I would rather focus on the things I can actually change rather than worrying and activating about the things I've got no chance of ever changing.
Yeah.
So I can change a person's life. I know that. I've seen it 1,000 times, thousands and thousands of times. I can bring transformation into their world so they actually feel differently. Their heart, their attitude, their mind, their thinking, their whole spiritual orientation is completely changed.
On the internet, you've seen Lord of the Rings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen Lord of the Rings. I always thought that the ring's power was such a lame power, just to go invisible. Like, what are you going to do with that? You're just going to be a crick with that. Yeah, what are you going to do? But then its power is to be unseen. There's a term for it. It escapes me. It's to be anonymous.
Right.
And that's the internet.
Yeah.
So you got a lot. If you're a public figure or you're putting out good news to the world, expect to have people put on their ring.
Totally.
And to have, on average, about 6 to several accounts people have, and some are anonymous.
Yeah.
And they feel powerful behind this
Yes,
ring.
yes.
They feel like, my name is 124 Shark, blah, blah, blah. And they say what they bloody want. But if they say it to your face, they wouldn't dare.
No.
I guess they'll get Will Smith in the head,
It's strange, isn't it? Yeah.
It's a strange world we live in. Just to finish up, Phil, because I appreciate your time, mate. Obviously, you're just moving your global movement forward.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that succession is part of the season.
Sure.
How old are you?
72 nearly.
I want to ask you this question. How old do you feel here?
Oh, nothing like that. Yeah, my body feels it every now and then. But my head, no, I love young people.
Yeah,
I love hanging out with young people.
I feel I'm hanging. It doesn't. Age is innumerable, but
Right.
you're one of the boys.
Yeah. Well, God's not old.
Yeah.
He may be the Ancient of Days, but he's youthful.
Yeah.
When it says, the young will stagger and fall, Isaiah talks about him. He says, but those who wait on the Lord shall renew their strength. So it's like you'll become young again. You'll rejuvenate when you connect with God. You're not going to get young again hanging out with an old person. He's not tired. He's not depressed. He's not worried. He's not sick. So when you draw on him, when you hang out with him, there's an impartation of that same life and energy, youthfulness into us.
Put a number in it. How old do you feel here? When
Probably 35.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just getting going in some areas.
You don't have to go into detail here, but are you being intentional, or is there a plan of how to succeed?
Yes.
For succession. Are you in
Totally.
the process of learning? Are you doing it?
No. It needs to be extremely intentional. Otherwise, it'll get away on you. And I've seen too many transitions go wrong. So maybe 5 years ago, I told Alex Lee, who's in our church, maybe 4 years ago, because we went through we considered 3 candidates. Due diligence will eliminate options, and I think that's a scriptural way as well. Look at your options and then decide which one. And in my heart, I felt that he was going to be the one maybe 6-7 years ago. And he grew up in our church. And so I began inviting him into my world in various ways. And one of them was in prayer. So I pray each morning. And so I said, join me in prayer. And so he did for 18 months. And then before he actually took over, and then we'd still hook up doing that for prayer every now and then. But that one factor was crucial, because there were so many conversations and prayer times that we would have together. And then my respect for him grew as I, traveled with him through a bunch of different circumstances that I challenged him on, saying, I want you to do this, I want you to have that done. And he did them. And I wouldn't have said they were that easy either. So he proved that he could. These were areas that I hadn't seen in him. I'd seen him in leadership roles. I'd seen him in communication roles, all kinds of areas, and he was brilliant. And so he has done an exceptional job of transitioning into that part. So that was 2 years ago that my wife and I handed the leadership of C3SYD over to him. So now I am just leading the movement. And right now we're in that process of looking towards, within about 3, 4, maybe 5 years, I don't know. I've said to the guys, I'm a little more open-ended about this one. I feel like I could still be the leader at, a later stage, and it wouldn't be a problem. But in a local church, I think you don't want to be just an aging pastor and the young people sort of leaving because they feel like it's an old person's church.
Yeah, I think to close the loop from the beginning of the conversation around how business principles and church, very similar. There's one thing that's a big difference between church and business, in my view now, is you don't sell church.
Right.
And in a way, it's a cool thing, because when you sell a business, you don't necessarily impart 18 months of being shoulder to shoulder, being so close with them.
Yeah.
It's like there's checks and balances, a lot of documents and a lot of systems and people staying on for a certain time, and then you're on your own and you run your own race. What's beautiful about what you've said there with Alex, as an example, is it's like parenting. It's like you're passing on like a father would to their son with, this is how I've run the place, this is how I think I've been around.
Yeah.
And I've told clients this, who one in particular, in his late 60s, very respected business guy. And I told him, as we're doing his brand, I said, you realize you have old man wisdom? Meaning your words, if I said what you said, it wouldn't carry as much weight.
Right.
Because you are a higher rank in respect and age is what comes with that. So be aware, even though you don't feel your age, know that it has an impact when you do it. You can be more intentional with that as an approach.
It's good.
And it's beautiful to hear. And I just can't thank you enough for spending time with us.
Thanks, Matt. It's been a delight.
I'll actually welcome you, because this is a non-Christian podcast. But I'd like you to say prayer. Like, would you be welcome to say prayer for everyone listening?
I will. Yeah. Lord, I pray for every listener, every viewer, that right now your presence would settle their heart. You'd ease troubled minds. You'd lift heavy burdens. You'd help people be inspired to dream a bigger dream. I'm praying, Father, for any individual right now who's in trouble in their relationship, in their personal life, that there be healing. And that you show them the way through. I'm praying that this year would be one of their greatest. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thanks, Pastor Phil.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Wow.